Hey gamer friends, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Josiah.
And we are ready to roll.
Today, we're going to be talking about replayability in games.
Now, replayability is just how much can you replay that same game over and over and over again. So some games are meant to be like one-time experiences, and then other games are designed to be replayable, but maybe they're not for whatever reason, like they're not very much fun to replay them.
Sure.
And then other games just seem to have this natural, I don't know what it is about them, but it makes you want to go back over and over and over again.
Yeah, for sure.
And revisit exactly what's going on in that game.
How important is it to have replayability for you?
I would say it just depends on the experience that we're going for. So obviously, like with a legacy type game, you're not going to have any replayability because it is a literal one-time experience. You're even trashing stuff. A lot of times you're ripping things up or whatever, adding stickers. And so you're not going to be able to replay that or have that same experience again. But I still love those types of games.
Right.
And so I'm like, it's okay that it's only a one-time experience because I'm loving it.
Right.
But then there are other games where I love to get back over and over and over and maybe try different strategies, because I feel like that's one of the biggest parts of replayability is revisiting strategy. Like, okay, well, that time I did this and I focused on this area. The next time we play this game, I may try something a little bit different and see how it does.
Right.
And I really like that.
So to summarize, replayability is important, but it's not everything.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And then you were telling me about a podcast that you ran across where they were talking about replayability versus revisitability.
Yeah. So, okay, these guys on the podcast is Decision Space. And if you don't listen to them, go listen to them because it's a great podcast. They're really interesting. But they've talked about this a few times, but they have replayability, which is exactly what I said. It's like a game that you can go back to and replay. And then they have revisitability. So revisiting a game is something like maybe it's a Halloween game. And so it's not something they want to replay a ton of times, but they do want to revisit it every year because it's kind of, there's like something about playing it every year during that time of year. It's a very revisitable game. Yeah. But not necessarily one you play over and over and over again.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I really liked that. I was like, that's a very smart way because we have a lot of games that I would call revisitable games. They're games I wouldn't want to play over and over, but I do like having them in our collection and I do like going back to them occasionally. Yeah. Sometimes to me, those giant epic games that take a really long time, that's like a revisitable game.
Yeah.
I may not even want to play that every year, but I do want to revisit it
come back to it at some point
every year or something like that. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I totally agree with that. There are games that I'm finding that I didn't realize were revisitable that are revisitable. For us, for instance, The Loop.
Yes.
We talked about this on a different video, but it's a game that we actually didn't have a very good experience when we first started, but we just got it back on the table and we're like, this is great. We had a great experience with it. And so being able to revisit that was really important. I think.
Was.
Yeah.
I agree.
But then we have games where it's like, it doesn't matter how many times we've played it. We always have a really good time when we get it on the table.
That's right.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I would say like one of the most like replayable games that we have, like Arc Nova is a really good example of that for me because we've played it a bunch of times. Yeah. And I still want to play it again. And there's so many cards. I don't feel like I'm having the exact same experience every single time I play. You know, it feels so different.
I'm not even sure we've seen all the cards.
That's true. That's true. It's this huge stack. And even like the conservation, you know, they have different ways that you can do the conservation and things like that. So there's just different cards that are going to come out each time you play. And that makes it a really big replayable game to me.
Yeah, for sure. So how much should cost be a determining factor in replayability?
There is an element there, right? Because if I'm going to go and I'm going to spend $50 on a game, I kind of want to be able to play it more than one time. But then I'll go and spend $100 on a legacy game.
Right.
And it's a one-time playthrough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the game, honestly. because most of the time I want to have replayability in a game, because games aren't cheap.
No, they're not.
Most of the time. I typically do want to have replayability in games. We do spend a decent amount of money on a one-time experience, but we know that going in, and we know that we're going to have a good time.
That's true. There is a, like, what do they call that?
Cost analysis.
Yeah, kind of a cost analysis of, okay, I know that going into this. So when I say legacy, it's not really a one and done experience. Right. It's actually played over multiple sessions. So you're actually getting a lot more bang for your buck than when I would say, oh, it's just a one-time thing,
Right. And in a lot of cases in these one-time playthrough games, you're playing for hours, sometimes 20 or 30 hours, depending on the game.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we do is when we're going into a legacy game is, let's say we go to dinner and a movie, we're spending close to $100.
Oh yeah, easy.
In that process. And you're talking about 3 hours maybe?
Right.
Versus spending $120 or whatever it is on a legacy game and playing for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So it's, for us, it's a good experience.
It is.
We get a lot of bang for our buck, and we're spending a lot more quality time
than we would at the movies.
Than we would at the movies. And so that's kind of how we view it. Does your view of a game tend to increase or decrease when it comes to replayability?
I think generally speaking, I would say it increases, because when I purchase a game and I know that, this is a fun game and we're going to get to play it over and over and over, then my view of that game tends to go up. Now, we have had the experience where I purchased a game thinking I'm going to be able to play it over and over, and we play it and it's just kind of a dud, where we're like, that's okay, that was a good one-time experience, but to play it again and again isn't really very much fun. So then my view of that game might diminish. If it's a really good experience, though, it won't matter.
Right.
I guess if the game is really good, or we have a really good group of people that we're playing with and it's a fun experience, then replayability may not be quite as important.
Right.
But generally speaking, I would say yes. What about you?
I totally agree. I think that the answer is most of the time yes to that question. Yes, it increases with replayability. Yes, it decreases if the replayability is not there, generally speaking. There are exceptions to that, like you mentioned. Does the size of your collection matter when it comes to replayability? I
think it does, but because there are people who like to only have a handful of games, and they want to explore every nuance, every strategy of that game, and they are going to spend time on it, and they want that replayability to be really high, because they're not going to have a ton of games. And so they really definitely want to get all their money's worth, and they want to just explore every bit of the game.
So in that case, replayability
would
really
be really
high.
important for people like that. Now, for people like us, we have a lot of games. We like a lot of different games. And so maybe it's not quite as important to a gamer like us, where we would rather have a bigger collection and maybe not go back to those same games over and over and over again. There are going to be our favorites. There are going to be games that we're going to do that with. But generally speaking, we like a lot of variety in games. And so maybe replayability isn't as important as those that collect just a small number of games and really want to dive into all the nuance.
Right. Totally agree with that.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.
And tell us down below in the comments, what is your favorite replayable game? We'd love to hear about it.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.